Good evening. I'm Ellison Barber in for Tom Llamas. Let's get right to that breaking news. Rudy Giuliani ordered to pay $148 million to two Georgia election workers. In August, Giuliani was found liable for defaming the two workers, a mother and a daughter, while he was the lawyer for former President Donald Trump. Giuliani repeatedly accused the women of unfounded election fraud and even circulated a heavily edited and misleading video of them. Here's how that massive verdict breaks down. The mother, Ruby Freeman, awarded about $16 million in damages. Her daughter, Shay, about $17 million in damages. $20 million each for emotional distress and $75 million in punitive damages. Giuliani outside court not mincing words about the bill and vowing to appeal.
The absurdity of the number merely underscores the absurdity of the entire proceeding, where I've not been allowed to offer one single piece of evidence in defense, of which I have a lot. So I am quite confident when this case gets before a fair tribunal, it'll be reversed so quickly, it'll make your head spin.
The two women say the repeated lies led to dangerous threats and ultimately turned their lives upside down. They both spoke following today's decision. Take a listen.
A jury stood witness to what Rudy Giuliani did to me and my daughter and held him accountable, and for that I'm thankful. Today is not the end of the road. We still have work to do. Rudy Giuliani was not the only one who spread lies about us, and others must be held accountable too. But that is tomorrow's work. For now, I want people to understand this. Money will never solve all of my problems. I can never move back into the house that I called home. I will always have to be careful about where I go and who I choose to share my name with. I miss my home, I miss my neighbors, and I miss my name.
Our greatest wish is that no one, no election worker or voter or school board member or anyone else ever experiences anything like what we went through. You all matter, and you are all important. We hope no one ever has to fight so hard just to get your name back.
So for more on this outcome and the case, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Angela Senadella. Angela, I mean, this is a massive amount of money, $148 million, but it is actually more than what the lawyers for the mother-daughter were asking for. So how does a jury come up with a total like this in a case?
Well, the punitive damages are almost just a question. Nobody really knows how they come up with that number. But in terms of the other damages, they were looked at for defamation, the $16 million per victim. They estimated what it would cost to run a marketing campaign to restore their reputation. So if you look at the overall number, it's almost split exactly in half in two big buckets. The first is compensatory. So that's to make up for all the harms the victims experienced. Then the other half, the $75 million, is for punitive, and that's literally just to punish Mr. Giuliani and to prevent him from doing similar actions in the future.
I want to play a little bit of the mother and daughter, Moss and Freeman's testimony that they gave to the January 6th committee, just describing what they'd experienced, and then we'll talk right after.
I've lost my name, and I've lost my reputation. I've lost my sense of security. All because a group of people, starting with number 45 and his ally, Rudy Giuliani, decided to scapegoat me and my daughter, Shay, to push their own lies about how the presidential election was stolen.
A lot of threats, wishing death upon me, telling me that, you know, I'll be in jail with my mother, and saying things like, be glad it's 2020 and not 1920.
They have given such emotional testimony. We saw it on the Hill during January 6th related hearings, but also during the course of this trial. How impactful do you think it was for jurors to actually hear directly from him with that kind of emotion?
I think it was extremely impactful. And also look on the other side that Giuliani himself put up almost no defense. And first he said he was going to go on the stand. He was going to debunk everything they said. But he provided no mitigating analogies, experience, or any words that would turn those damages down. So usually in a trial, you have plaintiffs go up, they give their side, you have defendants go up, they give their side, and then the jury has to weigh both of these. In this case, there was no defense. So the jury fully just listened to this very emotional testimony.
It was interesting to hear Giuliani say, I didn't get to present evidence, but he chose after they testified to not testify, right? He absolutely had the opportunity.
Absolutely. And it was definitely his choice. And I imagine it's also because his trial here intersects with his criminal trial. And so he cannot talk about a lot of things. But in a civil case like this, if he chooses not to testify, that can be used against him. And clearly that was here by the jury.
So explain what happens next for Rudy Giuliani, particularly, and you touched on this in terms of his other legal cases. I mean, will this have any sort of impact?
Well, he said that he will appeal, so that's probably what's next. There's also a possible bankruptcy down the line, like we saw with Alex Jones. When you have a huge verdict that you cannot pay, often bankruptcy is the answer, although not always do courts end up shielding your liability in that bankruptcy. Now, in terms of his other trial, though, when you have no money, launching a defense is a big problem. I do think it's possible that would lead him closer to a cooperation because legal fees during the course of a trial are extensive, and I don't see him going with a public defender here.
So before we let you go, let's talk quickly about the former president, Donald Trump, because he has an ongoing legal battle in the same state. Is there any world where this ruling and what's happened with Rudy Giuliani could impact his case, or are his attorneys looking at this and thinking, oh no, we might have an issue?
I think his attorneys are looking to see what Giuliani will say. And so that's why I think it really helped all of their criminal cases that he did not talk on the stand. So while it obviously hurt the damages here in his civil case, in the criminal trial, not saying anything gives him far more leverage, especially because that is a RICO case. There's so many defendants. What he said could impact in ways far beyond just himself.
Angela Cinadella, brilliant as always. We appreciate your time. We're tracking a powerful new storm system developing in the Gulf of Mexico at this hour, closing in on Florida and taking aim at the East Coast. 5 million people now under flood alerts with a threat of damaging winds and even some tornadoes tomorrow night. Residents there are already preparing for the heavy rains. In Hollywood, Florida, officials installing these barriers. They're called tiger dams. It's to prevent flooding along the beaches there. So let's get right to NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns. Bill, what are you seeing?
Well, the storm is forming, so we're okay right now. We'll be all right tomorrow morning. It's when we get through Saturday afternoon that this storm in the Gulf will get closer to Florida. We'll also combine with this storm that you see over the top of Kansas. That'll happen on Sunday on the East Coast. So we'll start with Saturday first off. We'll have the persistent winds. We've already been dealing with this all week long, easterly winds. We're not going to power outages from the wind, but we will be seeing the rain intensifying, and we also will have a chance of isolated severe storms after dark. So nocturnal severe weather is never fun for anyone, especially if it's during the overnight hours when you're asleep. And that's the potential for at least an isolated tornado or two. And that's from Tampa to just south of Orlando, all the way through, roughly about 2/3 of the state of Florida has a chance of severe weather during the overnight hours, Saturday night into Sunday. And then by the time we get through the weekend, this storm goes all the way up the East Coast. And by Monday, it'll be plaguing us in New England. So what does this all mean? Well, everyone's going to get rain. Some areas will get heavier than others, locally up to 5 inches. Jacksonville, I'm concerned with our friends from Savannah, Brunswick, heading up here, Hilton Head to Charleston, Myrtle Beach, Georgetown. This area is going to get a lot of heavy rain, and it's going to have a chance for some coastal flooding concerns. There's not a lot of snow with this. This will be on the backside Monday into Tuesday, but these are areas that expect to get snow. Allison, if anyone has travel plans, a big heads up in the Northeast Monday morning. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to feel like a tropical storm is over the top of us.
Ooh, all right, Bill Cairns, thank you. Moving overseas now to the war in the Middle East. Israel revealing tonight the IDF accidentally killed 3 Israeli hostages, mistaking them for Hamas fighters. This news coming as the U.S. continues to urge Israel to switch to a more targeted military strategy in Gaza. Here's NBC's chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel with the latest.
This video was taken by 28-year-old Yotam Haim on his kibbutz near Gaza on October 7th. He says a terrorist infiltration is underway. Sometime after, Hamas militants set fire to his house when he opened the window for air. he was kidnapped. Tonight, Israel announced that Haim, along with 2 other Israeli hostages, 25-year-old Samer Al-Talaka and 26-year-old Alon Shamriz, were killed when Israeli troops mistook them for Hamas fighters and shot them, according to the Israeli military, which says they may have escaped or were abandoned by their captors. Prime Minister Netanyahu wrote in part, "Together with the entire people of Israel, I bow my head in deep sorrow," calling it an unbearable tragedy. Tonight, families of other hostages are calling to restart talks to free more captives.
We cannot handle with more death. We want them now here.
Israeli troops are fighting Hamas street to street and bombing intensively. The Biden administration is urging Israel to switch to a more targeted campaign.
We're not here to tell anybody, you must do X, you must do Y. We're here to say, this is our perspective as your partner, as your friend.
The Israeli military says it does more than any other army in the world to avoid civilian casualties, including warning Palestinians with leaflets and robocalls. Tonight in the West Bank, I met Gazans who were working inside Israel and are now trapped. They'd all undergone background checks by Israel. Ahmed al-Masri told me his wife and 4 children were killed in Gaza by an Israeli airstrike a week ago. He showed me their pictures. I have one left, he says. Nearly everyone has had at least one relative who's been killed.
He's telling me that what bothers him the most is not that his brother died. Thank you very much. But that he's still under the rubble of the apartment that he was in.
They don't know when they'll go back to Gaza and say every time the phone rings, it's usually bad news, that someone else is either injured or dead.
Richard Engel joins us now from Jerusalem. So, Richard, with this tragic news that the IDF accidentally killed 3 Israeli hostages and the international community urging Israel to limit its attacks on Gaza, are the people of Israel still in support of this war? And if so, how much?
Support for the war against Hamas is extraordinarily high. I think Israelis are united in that. Some people from the Israeli left who support a 2-state solution, people from the Israeli right who don't want to have any accommodation with the Palestinians at all, both support destroying Hamas. But support for Prime Minister Netanyahu is extraordinarily low. Many families of hostages in particular, don't support his approach. They think that it's time to go back to a ceasefire, that they should have negotiations with Hamas, at the very least to get or try and get more hostages out. They think that Netanyahu is focused on his political survival, that he is too eager to go into this military campaign in order to placate some of the extreme members of the Israeli society. So generally, yes, they support the war against Hamas, but they don't trust Prime Minister Netanyahu, according to opinion polls, to carry it out, and worry that his personal agendas may be impacting his decision-making, and that puts the hostages' lives at risk.
All right, Richard Engel in Jerusalem, thank you. Now to Moscow and our NBC News exclusive interview with the top Kremlin spokesman, weighing in on the war in Ukraine, the U.S. presidential election, and a whole lot more. NBC News' chief international correspondent Keir Simmons has this report.
Tonight, Russian President Vladimir Putin's spokesman weighing in on the upcoming U.S. elections, calling for dialogue despite Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
President Putin would like to see someone who is more constructive towards our country.
Could the Kremlin work with President Trump?
I have no doubt that President Putin will be ready to work with anyone who is ready to work with him.
It's illegal in Russia to call its special military operation a war. But Dmitry Peskov says
it is a war. It is a hybrid war that actually the United States is orchestrating against our country.
Saying Russia will still win, even with more U.S. aid for Ukraine.
This is a great mistake of Washington, actually.
But you accept that so far, America's funding and its weapons has been one of the crucial factors that has prevented Russia from reaching its goals.
It's making the story longer.
One independent polling organisation tells us half of Russians now want peace talks, though most would not give up territory.
To return back the territories is treated like a surrender.
And on Americans, Paul Whelan and Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, who the US say are wrongly detained.
President Putin is always interested in a deal.
They are hostages to the deal you want to do, aren't they?
No, they're not hostages. They're in custody.
And Keir Simmons joins us now from Moscow. Keir, it is pretty rare for an international journalist to have access to such high-ranking officials within the Kremlin. What else stood out to you in your interactions with Dmitry Peskov?
Well, I think one aspect, Ellison, which sometimes gets overlooked about Russia is that things can be a little bit disorganized. So just to give you an example, I asked him about another American journalist, Elsu Komesheva, who is also held here in Russia, about whether she might be part of a deal, the kind of deal I talked about in the piece, whether or not her release might be negotiated. And Dmitry Peskov honestly didn't have an answer for that. He said, I honestly don't know. And then just the contradictory nature of some of the things that the Russians are saying, that the Kremlin is saying. So, for example, saying, yes, we want to talk, but we don't want to give up any of our goals, or blaming the US for breaking down dialogue, for not having dialogue with Russia, when, of course, that happened after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And I think what that goes to is this, Ellison, is that even if there are talks, the Russians are going to come into those talks with such preconceived notions of where they should end up. It's very difficult to imagine how they even are worth having at this stage. And also for the Ukrainians, with President Zelensky saying, demanding that Russia leave Ukraine back to the 2014 internationally recognized borders, the two sides are so far apart. I said to Dmitry Peskov, frankly, we're looking at more fighting, aren't we? And he said yes.
In Moscow, thank you. Now to a story we've been following in Europe, where a boy missing for 6 years has just been found. Tonight, details emerging about where he's been and how he got free. NBC News foreign correspondent Matt Bradley has more.
At just 11 years old, Alex Batty vanished. The Manchester, UK boy, missing since 2017, mysteriously found in southern France on Wednesday. A French student spotted the now 17-year-old and offered him help.
I saw a young guy on the side of the road with a skateboard under his arm, backpack, just a normal guy.
Batty said he had been walking through the forest for days.
He told me that he was kidnapped by his mother and grandfather.
Batty went missing after going on vacation with his mother and grandfather. He now tells authorities they whisked him away to live in nomadic spiritual communities in France. Authorities say the teenager finally fled when his mother tried to move him once again to Finland. His mother and grandfather's whereabouts are unknown. They're wanted in connection with Alex's disappearance.
He just wanted to live a normal life, to see his grandmother again, and to have a normal future.
Batty's grandmother is his legal guardian and has continued searching for him since his disappearance. One of the first things he did, reach out to her with a text message saying he wanted to come home. Now an international effort underway to get him there.
And our priority is to get him back to the UK and get him back to his family in Oldham as soon as possible.
With Alex finally starting his journey home, authorities say his family near Manchester are now massively relieved. And there's still a lot we don't know in this case. Questions remain about the communities that Alex and his family were living in France, and whether or not he was held against his will. And, you know, UK officials still have to verify Alex's identity, even if his grandmother is 100% sure it's him. And then Alex has to go about the business of going on with the rest of his life. And that's also not going to be easy. He told authorities that during his 6-year ordeal, he never once went to school. Ellison?
Matt Bradley, thank you. Still ahead tonight, killed in Colombia. A Minnesota man kidnapped and then stabbed after going on a date. The call he made to his brother just hours before he was found dead. Plus, the mother of a 6-year-old who shot his teacher in Virginia, sentenced late today. How much time she's facing in prison. And a fast fashion face-off. Why Temu is suing the popular retailer Shein, accusing the company of using mafia-style tactics to intimidate the competition. Stay with us. We're back now with a mystery in Colombia. A man visiting the country was reportedly kidnapped and killed on Sunday, shortly after calling his family back in Minnesota and asking for thousands of dollars. NBC News correspondent Stephen Romo now with what the family says about this shocking loss.
Tonight, the family of a Minnesota man desperate for answers after they say he was kidnapped and killed while visiting Colombia.
I'm out of words to describe. I don't even know how I feel right now.
50-year-old Tujer Zhang, an artist and activist, had been traveling in South America when he called his brother asking for money while on a date Sunday night.
This time he was like, hey, do you have a couple of thousand? I was like, yeah, no problem. When do you want it? He said, I want it now. I'm in this bit of a situation here. I go, oh, yeah, I can do that.
His family growing more fearful when Zhang stopped responding to texts.
Woke up in the morning at 7 a.m. I text him back and say, hey, I thought you said you need money. You still want the money? Text me back if you still want the money. No answer.
According to a local prosecutor, Zhang was kidnapped during a date and killed when he could not make the payment. His body later found in a wooded area covered in stab wounds. His family still searching for answers about how this shocking crime unfolded.
I was confused. To be honest with you, I don't know why, what the motive is.
Zhang had visited Colombia in the past, posting photos and videos to social media as recently as October with an unidentified woman.
I'm with my girl.
A refugee from Laos, Zhang and his family moved to St. Paul when he was a child. In recent years, he became a well-known comedian and community activist. Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar issuing a statement saying in part, quote, this is a heartbreaking tragedy. Tujer was an incredible person who was constantly working to uplift his community.
He truly believes in equity work and fighting for the underprivileged. And many times I always tease him. I say, you're not getting paid. Why are you doing it? But it's what motivates him.
A tragic loss made even more confounding by the mystery that still shrouds his final moments.
And he'll draw everybody in. That's the type of people he is.
Yeah, Ellison, so heartbreaking for this family trying to find answers from so far away. We do know that Senator Tina Smith from Minnesota is also working with the State Department to try to get the remains brought back home so they can have a funeral. Ellison.
Stephen Romo, thank you. We're back now with Top Stories news feed, and we begin with the sentencing for the mother of that 6-year-old who shot his teacher in Virginia. Deja Taylor sentenced to 2 years in prison after pleading guilty to felony child neglect. Her son opening fire with her gun in a classroom in January. The teacher has recovered from her injuries. Taylor is already serving a 21-month sentence for a separate federal gun charge related to this case. Now to a violent street takeover caught on camera in Connecticut. New body and dash cam video shows a crowd shooting fireworks at police. Authorities say the takeover happened in multiple cities around New Haven and included more than 500 cars. One officer was hospitalized with minor injuries. Police are now asking the public to help identify the suspects. And overseas, a terrifying moment for passengers on a roller coaster in Japan. New video shows riders stuck upside down more than 100 feet in the air at a Jurassic Park themed ride at a Universal Studios theme park in Osaka. Local media reporting staff used a set of emergency stairs to get the passengers off after 45 minutes. Luckily, no one was hurt. Now to the alarming new United Nations report on women in Afghanistan. The report found that the Taliban is sending some survivors of gender-based violence to prison, claiming, quote, for her protection, akin to how prisons have been used to accommodate drug addicts and homeless people in Kabul. The report adding this de facto policy is now in place after the Taliban closed all 23 state-sponsored women's protection shelters in Afghanistan. One Taliban official telling the UN such shelters were a, quote, quote, Western concept. The Taliban, long known for their restrictive view of women's rights, dating back to their first government in the mid-1990s and early 2000s. After 20 years of progress, many of the fundamental rights and freedoms Afghan women fought for stripped away as the Taliban returned to power in 2021 during the U.S. military's chaotic withdrawal. Joining me now to provide context on this report in the state of women in Afghanistan, Wilson Center Middle East Program Director Marissa Korma joins us now from Washington, D.C. Marissa, I understand you actually just got back from a trip where you were meeting with students from the American University of Afghanistan. For those women who did grow up in the last 20 years in Afghanistan and understanding that women's rights were not perfect before the Taliban, but how do they say things are for them now under Taliban control? How different is it?
That's right, Alison. I met with students from the American University of Afghanistan, the campus that moved to Doha, Qatar, and very generously supported by the government in Qatar. The female students were very worried about the situation in Afghanistan, but I was also very inspired and very hopeful because they were very adamant and very determined to give back to the students who are stuck in other parts of Afghanistan, who are unable to go back to university. So they're all contributing in various ways with different online programs, sometimes even coaching other students in Kabul and other provinces on WhatsApp. And so online education is key. But of course, they're very worried about their families, and especially if they have female siblings.
This report, it is just the latest in a string of Taliban policies targeting women, including the recent closure of beauty salons. We saw that happen this past summer. Are there any safe spaces, truly safe spaces, left for women in the country?
That's a really good question. And tragically, I don't think there are any safe spaces because the private spheres, people's homes, are also not safe, precisely because the gender-based violence amongst partners is also very high worldwide, but particularly in Afghanistan. And I think that some of these shelters that were state-sponsored and organized and run by a lot of civil society organizations, as you indicated in your report, have shut down. And so women are being taken to jail. This is impacting them psychologically, physically, and mentally as well. Various reports in the last few months also indicated that 80% of the attempted suicides in Afghanistan are amongst women. And so the situation is really disconcerting, and the international community has a responsibility to pressure the Taliban government to do a lot better. Unfortunately, we're not seeing any signs of that.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question for you. I mean, we talk about issues like this as if they are problems solely with the Taliban and happening in Afghanistan. And obviously, this is a problem in Afghanistan. It is because of the Taliban. But at the same time, the United States has been so heavily involved in Afghanistan for decades. Does the U.S. and the international community bear some responsibility for what is happening there right now? And when you speak to women, and you said the international community isn't doing enough here, what do they want to see countries like the United States do?
They want to see the United States governments as well as other governments around the world step up by supporting different types of programs to ensure that young girls and young women in Afghanistan have a chance to be educated. I think that the fact that you have a generation that in the last 15 to 20 years have had access to educational institutions is very important. And they are very determined to keep at it. They are so strong and truly inspiring in moving forward with that. But they're also putting themselves and many family members at risk. So I think the least the United States and other governments in the West can do is to help support a lot of these initiatives that are homegrown. But also there's a responsibility for Muslim-led countries or governments of Muslim-led countries to also step up, because condemnation of what the Taliban is doing is not enough. If they can use the same terminology that they use in their own countries to ensure that women have access to education and to the workforce, then they may have their way to also ensure that girls and young women in Afghanistan have the same opportunities. And so they even have I guess, more credibility, or they should at least have more credibility. So they should also step up these efforts and support.
Marissa Korma, director of the Wilson Center Middle East program. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time and insight.
Thank you.
Coming up, the Hanukkah party bringing light amid darkness. A 12-year-old in California raising money for his bar mitzvah in an effort to help Israeli children who lost parents during the October 7th Hamas terror attack. How that money was put to use for a very special holiday celebration. Back now with the power of giving impacting someone thousands of miles away. The story of one 12-year-old boy in Israel resonating with another 12-year-old in California. Tom Llamas has this update on the Israeli community finding comfort from strangers across the globe.
What was your name again? Ori. What's your name? Tom. Nice to
When we first met Ori on the streets of Ofakim near the Gaza border, he told us a story we'd never forget.
We now are going to see the area where my father and my brother had died.
The 12-year-old was headed to a nearby home where his father, Moshe Ohayon, and his older brother, Eliad, died defending their town from Hamas terrorists. The family says this image shows how Eliad died embracing his father.
I'm collecting roots. I want to keep them for feelings. It's make me feel better.
Ori's words resonating around the world, capturing the attention of a 12-year-old boy in California. Shaitan Tecumseh says he saw the story and couldn't stop thinking about Ori.
The reason why I decided to help Ori was because he was 12 years old and I'm 12 too.
At first, Shaitan was just going to donate his allowance to Ori's bar mitzvah, but then realized there were other kids who also lost parents, so he started raising money. And this is what that generous act turned into. We were there as these children of war found a reason to laugh, sing, and dance, celebrating inside of a bomb shelter. The money allowing Ori to buy toys, food, and throw a Hanukkah party.
A young boy from across the world who didn't know us at all is coming and lighting a candle.
I want to say thank you for Shaitan.
In a town that lost so much, on this day, their community growing, finding comfort in new friends thousands of miles away. Tom Llamas, NBC News.
Thanks so much for watching Top Story. For Tom Llamas, I'm Ellison Barber in New York. Stay right there. More News Now is on the way.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.